Mayor of Washington, D.C., and we are located in the John Wilson Building in Washington, D.C. I am here to report out on findings related to independent investigation involving Ballou High School and attendance policies at DC Public Schools. On December the 1st, you will recall that I issued an order directing the Office of the State Superintendent for Education in the District of Columbia to conduct an independent investigation examining the allegations raised at Ballou High School and to look at the attendance policies at all DC public schools and especially to ensure that our policies and procedures towards graduation eligibility had been adhered to. This investigation included a thorough review of Ballou Senior High School, but also a district-wide audit across all of our schools. So today, Superintendent Kang, and we, like all the states, have a state education agency. And the state education agency is responsible for policies, grants, monitoring, oversight, and the accountability for the district's 67 LEAs. And DCPS is our largest LEA with 55% of our public school students. So today, Superintendent Kang will share the preliminary findings of specific allegations related to Ballou High School. The district-wide report is due to me by the end of January, and we will share those findings with you at that time. As I stated when we first talked about the allegations related to Ballou, that we would get to the bottom of any and all issues, that we will not push down bad news, and that we would hold everyone accountable, and that we would make sure that training policies and procedures would be in place to ensure that the very highest expectations that we hold for our students are met in each and every case. Our job over the last several weeks has been to investigate. Now we're going to tell you what we know and make the appropriate changes for the good of our students. So we're here today with our first report out. So first, we will hear the findings from the Office of the State Superintendent, which includes our outside review done by a firm with expertise in this area related specifically to Ballou Senior High School. So with that, I want to invite Superintendent Kang.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. My name is Hanseul Kang, and I'm the State Superintendent of Education for the District of Columbia. As the mayor said, on December 1st, she directed OSSE to conduct an independent analysis of student-level attendance and graduation outcomes for all public high schools in the district. OSSE used 3 methods to complete this review. First, a citywide attendance and graduation analysis of all public high schools conducted by OSSE staff. Second, a review of the public charter school board's oversight procedures for public charter high schools, also conducted by OSSE staff. And third, an investigation of DCPS, including Ballou High School, conducted by the outside firm Alvarez Marsal. Alvarez Marsal has completed its interim report focused on Ballou, which was delivered to OSSE on January 12th. The final report on all DCPS high schools will be delivered by the end of January. Although we do not yet have the complete set of findings from across all of DCPS, we wanted to share our report with our learnings to date, given the urgency of our timeline to best support our students. First, I'll talk a little bit about the citywide attendance and graduation analysis and the PCSB review completed by OSSE staff. Over the past 3 years, we have seen that absenteeism among our high school seniors has been rising, and more students with high absenteeism have been graduating over that period. We also see that students, although that is true, we still see that students are more likely to graduate when they attend school. So students with better attendance rates are still more likely to graduate from high school. We also see that patterns vary significantly by school type. So charter schools and DCPS selective high schools have lower levels of absenteeism and therefore lower levels of graduates who are graduating despite high levels of absenteeism. Our report goes through a school-by-school analysis looking at 12th grade students and their attendance rates. The patterns of attendance and graduation are also not the same at every DCPS neighborhood high school. We believe that a closer look could show differences in practice at the school level, and we have shared these findings with Alvarez and Marsal as they continue to look into all DCPS high schools. Next, on the Public Charter School Board oversight analysis, what we found is that the Public Charter School Board generally complies with its own policies around review and certification of graduates. However, PCSB current policies and procedures do not currently include a review of student attendance data or LEA attendance or credit recovery policies, and we encourage the Public Charter School Board to look into those areas in the future. Next, I will talk about the Alvarez and Marsal investigation into the implementation of DCPS's policies on attendance and graduation at Ballou. Again, this report focused on Ballou High School specifically, and it resulted in several findings, including a pattern of graduating students who have had extreme numbers of course absences, which is in contradiction to DCPS policy. We also saw an inappropriate or excessive use of credit recovery for students, including implementation that contradicted DCPS's stated policies. We heard about pressure from administrators on teachers to provide opportunities to pass, and generally inadequate training, tools, and supports to enable effective implementation of DCPS's policies and procedures. To provide a little bit more detail, policy violations were seen in a total of 113 of the 177 graduating students' records from Ballou High School. In general, on excessive absences, many teachers were found to not have applied the grade reduction that is required according to DCPS policy in regular courses. Many students also received credit in credit recovery courses despite excessive absences. Administrators also provided guidance on grading policies that were in contradiction to DCPS's LEA-wide policy, specifically requiring a grading floor of 50% rather than a lower minimum score. We also heard about significant gaps in training and support for teachers on using the grading system and policy. On credit recovery, we saw significant usage of credit recovery, including 83 of 177 graduates participating in some form of credit recovery during the 16-17 school year, and many students were enrolled in those credit recovery courses in contradiction to DCPS policy. Credit recovery policies were also found to be vague and undefined, with little oversight, coordination, or training. And finally, the report found that there was pressure for passing grades, that administrators communicated passing percentage expectations to teachers at high levels and encouraged teachers to find ways to pass students regardless of absences. Teachers also reported concerns of the impact of these pressures on their performance evaluations. In summary, again, OSSE used 3 methods to complete this review. As you can see, the first 2 methods are complete, as well as the interim report on Ballou, and these findings have been posted on the OSSE website under the advisories section. The report from Ballou is made public in full without changes, and the final report on all DCPS high schools will be delivered by the end of the month and made public shortly thereafter. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Superintendent. And I want to thank your team for the swift work. It has been a 45-day study period, and I think we all can agree that we wanted to have a sense of what we needed to do moving forward just as soon as possible for the benefit of all of our students. I am also will reiterate that we will have the final report by the end of the month, which will give us a full sense of what we need to do across all of our schools. I also want to, the Chancellor was briefed on this report yesterday, and his team has also been looking across the schools to make sure that that they understood the changes that needed to be made for our students. So he hasn't waited for this report, but certainly is informed by its findings. Let me just say that we will continue to be fully supporting everything that our children need, as we have been doing in our significant investments in DCPS. And that is why we have seen the improvements that we have over the years, including our children earning very high scores, or improving scores, I should say, on national assessments. We have been very committed to making sure that our children are being best evaluated so that we understand their preparedness for college and career, and that's why we switched to the PARCC assessment. We have also been encouraged by the confidence that parents continue to place in public education in the District of Columbia. This past year, we saw our 9th consecutive year of improved enrollment, of increasing enrollment in our schools. And this year, actually, for the first time in many, many years, we saw our 6th grade class equal the number of 5th graders that we had. So we are beginning also to retain our middle schoolers. We also this year worked hand in hand with our teachers to ensure that they have a contract, and they have been working without a contract for 5 years, a partnership that we know is only beneficial to our students. So we have and we will continue to demonstrate our commitment to equity and excellence for all of our students, but also high expectations in the consistent application of those expectations, but also the courage to improve, to change where we need to double down where it's required, but always to take a good hard look at our district and make sure we're making the improvements necessary. So I'm going to ask Chancellor Wilson to talk about some of those things. Chancellor.
Thank you, Mayor. As was shared, my name is Antwan Wilson, Chancellor, DCPS. You know that the Office of the State Superintendent of Education today, they released this report on attendance and integrity as a result of the investigation at Blue High School and also the investigation across the city. I'd start by just sharing that today's an opportunity to remind the city of who we are as a district and the responsibility that we have for our students. And that is that we are a district that puts students first, that is focused on excellence and equity, and that we, as the mayor shared, have the courage to do what's needed to make the improvements that our students deserve. So that means setting a high bar for our students. It also means making sure that our students are prepared for success once they leave us. The investigation found numerous issues that are extremely troubling to me. We see that at Ballou and also other high schools that they did not fully implement our policies as it relates to grading, as it relates to attendance, as it relates to credit recovery. Teachers did not receive proper training in our policies, and as a district, we failed to provide sufficient accountability to ensure our policies were implemented appropriately. Like many of you, I am disappointed in these findings, but I can assure you that DCPS has the courage to fix the issues and improve. It's our responsibility, in fact, it's our mission to ensure that our students graduate from our schools as a result of rigorous and joyful learning opportunities provided in a nurturing environment. That means that that diploma must be something that they can depend upon as a gateway to their future. We know that too many of our students are not ready to succeed in the workplace and in college, which is why in the capital commitment that we updated this year, we outlined that as a major focus for us. We know that our students have the ability to succeed, and it's our responsibility to do so. You see the numbers here in terms of Ballou High School, the significant number of students, over 60% of the students graduating with excessive absences. You heard from Superintendent Kang that the failure was at many levels. We have issues at Ballou, but we also have had a need to improve systems centrally as well, whether that be communication, whether that be training, and then also making sure that our students and parents are aware of the expectation. While the results of both the DCPS investigation and the A&M investigation across our schools are not final, we do know that we have significant issues across our schools with attendance, and we see excessive passing rates for students who had more absences than they should in the class. And we know that we have follow-up to do at a few of our schools, including Anacostia and Eastern High School, Woodson, and Roosevelt. And we are in the process of trying to understand what is behind some of the numbers there. Blue, certainly, as was shared, spikes in terms of the number of students involved. We will implement policies that help students succeed. As I mentioned before, we are prepared to do what is needed. We call this out in our strategic plan. Our vision is that students must feel loved. They must be challenged, and they must be prepared. Those were intentional words that we put in our vision because we feel that love is not about lowering expectations. Love is not about sympathizing with students' plight and then forgetting that we need to educate them. We must challenge them because it's with that love and that caring that we put them in a position to get the skills that they need to succeed. And they must be prepared for success while they're in school, but also they must be prepared as a result of being in school for the realities they're going to face once they graduate. So for us, that means making sure that there's value in our high school diploma. And we've begun to offer training for our schools in terms of what the policies are. We've started communication. We've sent some more communications today, but those communications actually began during the month of December because we again began to find out a lot of this information beforehand. We also know that we have to be a district that gives students second chances. It's extremely important to recognize that we have students who are going to fail, and failure is a part of life. And so we want to make sure that we're helping students understand that it is possible that you take a class that is difficult and you may not pass the class. When they fail, the work that they do to make up the course must be rigorous. It must meet the standard. It must position those students to succeed, and we know that we can do better. There have to be effective attendance supports. Now, we recognize that we have students who have real challenges. Now, this report points out, and I just want to make sure that we're clear, that students were absent throughout the day. So they have periods throughout the day, and whether it was first period or third period or seventh period, we had students who had excessive absences, and they need to be there. But we also have students who have to take care of children or take care of younger brothers and sisters. And as they do that, we want to make sure that we're providing an environment where they know that we understand that, but still holding them to an expectation of success. Our grading policy is quite clear that students are supposed to be in school, but we know that when we wrote the policy 2 years ago, we said we'd update it by May of this school year, and we're still in the process of doing that, and we'll be getting input from our stakeholders around that. Impact and assessing teachers and providing supports. For me, impact, it can't be about just giving people an evaluation score. It has to be a system that's focused on improving teacher practice, which is the intent of impact. And we know that teacher practice has improved. That's been verified by Stanford University and University of Virginia. It shows it leads to 4 months of extra student learning in both math and reading. But as we go forward, we want to make sure that we continue to improve the system, and that's informed by the voice of our educators. And then finally, accountability is an important piece of our work, which is one of the reasons why I started the year and added 2 deputy chancellors, one in charge of social emotional learning and another in charge of innovation and systems improvement. And that was done very intentionally because I felt like I needed to have additional people who were able to make sure that we put in the accountability systems that we need across the district, whether that be training for our teachers and then making sure that they feel like the training was effective. Whether that be understanding the social emotional supports that we want to provide students while we help them meet academic standards, or that be following up on policies and regulations that have been put forth by the city as to what's expected for students to learn. I just want to close by saying we are not going to give up on our students. We believe in them. I was a student who had a great number of challenges, and people did not give up on me. In fact, they expected me to be in school. They understood that it was my responsibility to drop my brother and sister off to school, and then they expected me to come in and learn. There were times, I've not shared this with folks, that I came to school and Miss Grieve made sure I had a kudo after school or some other bar to make, because I was hungry. And the idea of being able to get something to go from lunch until late at night to get something to eat, she felt it was her responsibility to make sure that I get that. But it's still, the standard was upheld. We will be a district that puts students first. We will continue our effort to improve our work around equity and excellence. And we'll do so in a way that makes sure that our students are successful. I'm hyper-focused on this. It's extremely important that our students get it. It's not about, for me, ever been about graduation numbers. Yes, we need students to graduate high school, but it's not because of what it says on a piece of paper. It's because what it means in their lives. It means opportunity. It means that a student can pursue their dreams. And we are determined as ever to do what needs to be done to ensure that our students get what they deserve, and that is a world-class education. Thank you.
So in summary, let me just say that we rolled out a policy in the 2015-2016 school year intended to raise the bar in our school district and ensure students were set up for success. But we've never really put in place the training, controls, or accountability to support it. Chancellor Wilson has outlined his plan to fix this at every level and inside the school and within the school district. But we know that we, the school district and the government, can't do it alone. And so we are calling, of course, on our students to understand what their job is. Their job is to go to school, to be there every single day, to show up ready to learn, to be on time, to work with their teachers, to ask for help when they need it, whether it's with schoolwork or if it's with their life in general. And we have to have the caring and expert adults in the school who are there and able to help them. We also need our parents to stay engaged in this process, and we need them to prioritize attendance for their students and push them to get to class on time. We will find better ways to support parents through technology improvements that are simple as making sure that the robocalls are not only letting a parent know if a child has missed school for that day, but if a child has missed a period, one period, the parent should be notified of. We need parents to be engaged with progress towards graduation as well, and making sure that their family is taking full advantage of the resources available at each and every school. We need our teachers and administrators also to make sure that they are following policies and procedures, and if there is something that has been put in place, that they need to ask for additional help if adequate training hasn't been provided. Chancellor Wilson is, of course, focused on making sure that the DCPS Central Office is also supporting schools, that every person there knows it's their job to support schools. And if we have new policies, that the technology, the controls, and the accountability is in place to ensure that those policies will be successful. So before I take questions, I also wanted to acknowledge a number of school leaders who are here. Jenny Niles is my deputy mayor for education. She's here. Also Karen Williams, the president of the State Board of Education. I believe I saw Marcus Batchelor, the Ward 8 representative on the State Board of Education. The council member Trayon White, who is the representative, the council member for Ward 8, and council member Robert White, who's here, who is the at-large council member. So with that, we will take questions. Yes, sir. Just please identify yourself.
Nathan Bach, ABC 7 News. Some teachers receive bonus money based on having high amounts of pass grades with the impact system. Is it being investigated right now? whether or not teachers who violated DCPS policies still receive bonus money, and if so, what is being done about it?
Well, we expect the final report to include any comments that we can make on impact. You heard the state superintendent, and I'll turn to her in a moment to expound on what I'm saying that the Alvarez Marsal report found that many teachers said that they felt pressured to make sure that every student had, there was a lot of documentation required before a failing grade was acceptable in many ways. And so what you heard the chancellor say is the point that we want to make. Obviously, our teachers are there to help children succeed, to teach them. They are not there to break the rules or the policies, and no one there should be telling them to do so. We believe, and there's some part of the impact evaluation that has to do with school climate, and each school determines what goes into that. We haven't seen, while we've heard these comments about being pressured, I don't think that we're going to find that it impacted one's impact score, or and then the superintendent can say a little bit more about that. But this is what we want to be clear about. The chancellor said it in a very good way. That impact is there to help us attract and retain the best and the brightest teachers, period. Anything else to add?
I think the mayor captured it well. The only thing I would add is that the Alvarez report makes clear that while teachers reported feeling this pressure, which is why it was included in the report, that the percentage of the impact score that was based on having students pass was a relatively small percentage. I believe it was 2% of the overall impact score. So you can see more detailed description of that in the Alvarez report.
Mayor Bowser?
Yes,
Who's
Mark.
who's been held accountable? What is the status of Principal Reeves right now? The report indicates that not only the principal, but assistant principals, plural, at Ballou, pressured teachers in this as far as grading and attendance. What is the principal's status right now? And who is being held accountable? Is anybody being fired?
Well, Mark, as I told you back in December, and I'll repeat again, that we expect all of our staff to follow rules and regulations, and certainly leadership at schools to be responsible for a culture that is supportive of those rules, put students first, of course. And I think the chancellor will be, I know the chancellor will be making some decisions around Ballou. We do know that he will be seeking a new principal for Ballou. We will continue to look at staff at Ballou, and we will continue as if any more information comes available in the final report about any other schools where we found the misapplication of policies and procedures.
So where is Principal Reeves? Is she
The principal will be on administrative leave,
pending termination?
pending our HR process.
For termination?
Pending our HR process.
Or that sounds
That's
like
all I can say about it. Yes. Now, anybody who hasn't asked a question? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, you just said that you expect rules and regulations to be followed.
Yes, ma'am.
But you also said in your conclusion that you rolled out a policy in 2015, 2016, the school year, but never really implemented or put the training in place to implement that policy. Are you saying then that this is your fault?
I'm saying that we should have done a better job, that we should have had, and I'm going to turn to the chancellor to respond to making sure that we had the central office support around not just leadership training, but school-based training on a new policy. That we should also have made sure that the technology was sufficient. I think we noticed in the report some technology deficiencies, but we also know that personnel at a certain level are responsible if they have any questions to make sure that those questions are resolved. Chancellor.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned during my remarks, we started the school year with a new Deputy Chancellor for System Innovation and System Improvement. brand new person, new to the district, because we felt we needed to step up our accountability across the district. Really, in terms of reaching our goals going forward, it wasn't a reflection of anything I knew about the past other than the feedback I was hearing as I went across the district, and that is the need for better support, the need for better training, and as this report indicates, that is certainly true as it relates to the grading policy that went forward. It's our responsibility to make sure that happens. Now, the training, what happened was that school leaders were trained, and the expectation was that they would turn around and train the staff. We believe as a district that when there are policies that impact students' grades and whether or not students will be conferred a diploma, it's important that there are opportunities for training for teachers directly from the district. And in addition to that, the principal would be providing additional training. So I think that that's extremely important. In addition to the training, we believe it's important that we also implement the transcript review process. And so the process that had existed in the past was really just looking over what schools sent us. And we have to review transcripts of each student and have that function centrally in the district. That function was not present in the district. The folks who were responsible for that work are not with us going forward, but I have placed that responsibility in the purview of our Deputy Chancellor, who has a responsibility for system improvement.
Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. Chancellor, I asked the Chancellor this question. I think you said that you're talking about changing the policy, and by May you'll have new standards for grading. We are now halfway virtually through the current school year. What is all this bureaucratic, pardon the expression, bureaucratic blather about making changes in the future? How does it affect right now?
Well, I want to be clear in terms of our current grading policy. Our current grading policy, the report is showing, was not being followed. So our current grading policy does not assign 50% for students who did not do work. Students who do not do work, they get 0. And our current grading policy requires that students are in class. And if they have more than 30 unexcused absences, they fail the course. And then there is a procedure that the school would need to go through in order to determine that students should pass the course. And so our current grading policy was not implemented. And in terms of going forward, what the development of grading policy is about, and we will continue to invest to improve. So we'll improve the current grading policy to make sure that it's aligned with our expectations going forward. But we have not waited to communicate expectations around our policy. We have not waited to put in to put the systems in place, the system checks, so that we can send out notices directly from central office. We're not waiting on those things. We're starting that immediately.
So just to be clear, each school has been directed to follow the policy as it now exists.
That is correct. They must follow the policy. Yes, schools have been informed that they are expected to follow the policy. By schools, that means we've communicated to teachers, we've communicated to school leaders, we've communicated to parents, we've communicated to students. And I will share with you this bit of anecdote just really quickly. I have a student cabinet. They represent students from across the district, and we were talking about this. And the students were asking me about notification of other students who miss, and I shared with them that it is our responsibility as a district, mine as a chancellor, to ensure that your diploma means something, that when you go to class that and you earn the grade, is that you earned it, and that those of you who went were not in any way being disadvantaged compared to the students who didn't go. And so we are not waiting on that. Our students understood that. They thanked me for that, and they understood that that's the work that we have to do as a school district.
I understand the aspirational nature of what you're trying to do, but it's just a question or not whether each school right now is imposing grades based on the system that's in place right now and not looking for ways to go around.
Our work right now is to make sure that all our schools are aligned to our policy, our current policy. In addition, we are implementing a transcript review process before diplomas are conferred, where there is a central team that goes in and inspects those transcripts to ensure alignment to our policy. Because what we hear in the report is that although the policy was new, it wasn't followed consistently across the district. It is our responsibility to ensure that it is.
Yeah, Harry Stein, anything in this report give you a sense of how long what had been happening at Ballou had been going on? And can you diagnose maybe anything in the culture, in the school system that shifted that would have kind of, it sounds like a more systemic pressure, so to speak,
Superintendent.
that could have happened?
Yeah, I think the final Alvarez report, again, will look more into findings across DCPS as a whole. What we see in the citywide data analysis that OSSE completed is that it does appear that students who have high levels of absenteeism are graduating at higher rates than they have in the past. Those rates have increased from 3 years ago to last year. We don't know exactly why yet, and we are hoping to learn more from Alvarez and from other reviews as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Kate McGee with WAMU. I have a question about credit recovery. In the report, it found that an email was sent from central office to high schools saying that kids should be put in, if they weren't on track to graduate, they should be put in evening credit recovery for the 4th term. And that this indicated that DCPS central office is aware of and encouraging the use of credit recovery for original credit. Whose decision was that at DCPS central office, and why was that decision made?
I'm going to ask Superintendent Kang to respond to what was in the Alvarez Marsal report, and I'm not sure if the Chancellor has yet seen an email.
Yeah, that was a specific finding in the Alvarez report. It found that the message actually was directing that the use of credit recovery for original credit be discontinued for summer school in 2017, but that it allowed the continuance of it during the 4th quarter of last school year. I can't speak to, I believe the Alvarez report identifies that the communication came from the Office of the Chief of Schools, but that's as much as I know.
Yes, anybody who hasn't asked the question? Yes, Stephanie.
Mayor, Stephanie Ramirez with Channel 9. So whistleblowers had brought a lot of these concerns up to higher ups around the period of graduation last year. This audit didn't come until a damaging news report, and at that press conference that we were with you at last, even the Chancellor expressed support for Ballou's principal. Why should DC's students and parents have faith that this is going to be handled correctly going forward?
I'm not sure. Let me just say, I think when we spoke the last time, we were kind of one day into looking into all of these allegations, and now we have about 6 weeks of review and pretty in-depth study. So I feel like our pathway forward and it has been informed by all of those things. People should have faith in what we're saying moving forward, is because we've pretty much laid bare some pretty difficult findings, okay? We have identified where we have had some in-school failures, some central failures as well, and we have also identified ways that we know that we need the community's support. That's students, and that's parents, and that's other caring adults. So I think it is important that we identify that, state today, that we've laid out the problems as we see them right now. We have a couple of more weeks of work to do, and then we think we'll be there. The other thing that I think is as important is this is not our first time talking about attendance. We have been talking about how schools and communities can help children get to school. I think it's our biggest responsibility to let kids know showing up half the time doesn't work anywhere in life. It doesn't work at school. It's not going to work at work. It's not going to work in any of the civic responsibilities that you pursue. The huge investments that we've made in turning around our schools only work if kids are sitting in the seats. And so that is one of the biggest things that we want to identify. Even going back several years ago, I think I talked to some of you about this. We were, as a government, trying to figure out ways to take down barriers. Some families told us they were paying $30 a month per kid to get them to school. And that's why we started Kids Ride Free on the bus and now on the metro. We implemented our Everyday Counts campaign to encourage not only parents but other caring adults to also be involved in the expectation raising that we're doing with our students and families to make sure that they're in seats every single day. But I think the bottom line that I would add, that the reason why parents will trust what we're doing is that we have done what we said we were going to do. We said that we were going to do an investigation and turn around some evidence or some supports for what's happening within 45 days, and we've done that. We specifically looked at Baloo. What we noticed with the superintendent's review and with the Alvarez and Marsal report is that we need to go further and look a little bit more in depth at our other schools, and we're going to report that information out.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? I'm sorry. We're asking a lot of questions that involve the parents and students, but what about every other resident of DC who maybe doesn't have a kid in the public school system? The audit, there were reports that it costs nearly $140,000. Are we looking at any other funds to pay for what's going on in the investigation?
We have what we need to pay for the investigation. Is that your question?
Yeah, taxpayer dollars,
Yes, I don't think any taxpayer doesn't want us to get to the bottom of what's going on. That's a relatively small amount when you compare it to our investment in public education. Yes, Mark?
Mayor Bowser, today Chancellor Wilson stood there and said he's hyper-focused on this now. But months ago, when this was brought to his attention by teachers at Baloo, in the worst case scenario, he ignored it by his own admission, or at least didn't prioritize, put it on the back burner. And none of this came about until WAMU actually did the work and made it public. So, back to Seppi's question, how are you holding Chancellor Wilson accountable for having been told about this in August and doing nothing until press accounts came out about it?
Well, I think we know. What I'm not happy with is knowing that we had problems that weren't immediately communicated to people that could do something about it. And part of that is our system. So if we have a teacher who is recognizing that policies are being broken, it's probably not the best or fastest way to put that in a labor grievance. And that's some of what we found. But maybe that teacher didn't know how to get to the chancellor's office, especially if the teacher is concerned about her boss. Okay, and so we need to make sure, and we will make sure, that is made clear, that the chancellor will identify how teachers can communicate concerns about grading or policy irregularities at their school, and that's important. And so I'll ask the chancellor.
Okay, you don't like the process by which they did it through the union.
That's not what I said, Mark. Mark, that's not what I said. I didn't say I didn't like it. I said it didn't work. Okay, it didn't get to the decision maker. That's what I said. So let's be clear about what I said. Let's be clear about what I said. I said it didn't work. It didn't get to the decision maker. And that's what we have to fix, and that's what we're going to focus on fixing. So if you're asking me, am I going to hold the chancellor accountable? Absolutely. And what the chancellor is accountable for is making sure that we have a system where a policy is written and distributed, has the proper supports from the central office, and that we have personnel in the schools that are going to implement it, and that we have a system that makes sure they're implementing them. And when a school says that a diploma can be conferred, we know that it matches up to what our requirements are, and that's the chancellor's job. Yes.
The strategic plan for the next few years includes another goal increase in the graduation rate. How does the school district restore integrity in that number with the public? And is there any reviewing of whether that is the goal that the school district wants at this point?
Yes, and I'm going to ask the chancellor to talk about how that end of year process when it comes to diplomas should be laid out.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to share just a few things. One is where I started, and that is what got me here. What got me here is that I got an education and I was held to a high standard. When I learn of an issue, I get going on it. And I learned that we had an issue with system accountability. I hired a deputy chancellor and charged them with making changes. We had an issue that came through our labor management issue amongst 30 things, and I did not get that information. So I appreciate that question, but I need to make sure that the things that are shared are accurate. But when I did receive information around credit recovery, we immediately began to meet with our new Deputy Chancellor and asked her to begin to look into this. I've not read this report. I have gotten information from our Deputy Chancellor as a result of her investigation, and she's followed up at Ballou. As it relates to going forward on the graduation program, our expectation is that our students graduate. Let's be clear. For me to lower the expectation would be to say that I don't believe that our students can graduate. I do. I do believe they can graduate. I believe that they can graduate with the support they need to get to school. I believe that they can graduate with the support that they need to get additional help in math. I believe that they can graduate if they get help from mentors. I believe that they can graduate when they're surrounded by adults who are going to help them be successful. So reviewing transcripts is an important part of it. Making sure that our students understand that we have empathy for their needs, but we're going to make sure that they come to class. That is an important piece that our students must have. And then making sure that our policies are clear to our students, our teachers, our parents is extremely important. We look forward to reporting out as we go forward, not only our graduation rate, but also what we're finding in terms of our students' alignment with our policies and procedures, because I think that's going to be important to continue to share out so that people do have the confidence that students are ready to go.
Chancellor, if I could just follow up. When did you first learn that Ballou High School had a problem with its graduation, grades and graduation? You said it was in the process as one of 30 things that came to you. When did you first learn that Ballou had a problem with grades and graduation?
I learned about the grievance that was shared as this investigation was taking forth, and that's where that information was.
I'm sorry.
There was
it August? Was it September?
That was in after the school year started. It wasn't August or September. It was, I think, I can't remember.
Started in late August or?
No. I began to be asked about the investigation around Ballou, I want to say in October, but I can get you that information in terms of when that is. But it certainly wasn't August or September. Now, let me just say this.
I apologize, just trying to be clear because I want to make sure it's not reported. Did you learn of it through the WAMU NPR questions, or did you learn it through your own system?
I learned the specifics of what was going on at Ballou in terms of the concerns around credit recovery, around the alignment with the policies, around attendance. I learned that in the course of the investigation. What I also learned...
Whose investigation? The
WAMU.
The WAMU investigation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
What I also learned is that there was a teacher who made a report in August. I learned that during that process as well, because of course as the questions came up, I began to ask, and that's why the mayor mentioned that we needed to put a system in that allows that to get to me much faster.
A follow-up on that, Chancellor. Councilmember Robert White, his office reports to us that there was a meeting, I believe August 24th or August 25th, talking about complaints that he was hearing about Ballou High School. This was shortly after he received some files, files that both WJLA and WAMU use regarding Ballou High School, the attendance and transcripts. If there was a meeting in late August, were those records discussed? What was discussed between you and Councilmember Robert White in late August?
Well, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember specifically the meeting that you're referring to. What I can say is that we had numerous complaints coming out of Ballou, particularly relating to teacher turnover. And we talked a lot about teacher turnover in multiple conversations with the council member. We talked about issues related to school, the culture at the school and the supports that they need. We talked about attendance a great deal in multiple conversations since I've been here with Councilmember White. Specifically in August, I don't have that. What I can say is this, that I take these issues very seriously, and I always have, and I always will take these issues very seriously. I need students to graduate high school. That's what I got. I got an opportunity to graduate. When I hear people talk about the challenges that the students had, I had that. I went to multiple schools, transferred every year, in schools. I'm only standing here in front of you because someone helped me get the education. Now, I'm going to also say this. I wish I had known faster. I wish I had done more. That is extremely important, and that's hard to wrap my mind around. But my commitment to the city is to make sure that the diploma is what it's supposed to be, and that is an indication of student readiness, an indication that our students got the education that they deserve. And I'm steadfast in making sure that that is what we do as a school district.
Last question for Kate.
This is for Superintendent Kang. In the December hearing with the City Council, you testified that OSSE does not have any system-wide, for public and charter schools, any system-wide regulations for credit recovery programs, and that they're kind of being implemented on an individual LEA level. What is OSSE, if OSSE is going to do anything to address that and maybe create some standards for the city?
That's correct, that currently credit recovery policies are set at a local education agency level. I think that's an area that we need to look into further. I think first and foremost, it's important that when a local education agency has a policy, that it is being followed. In this case, DCPS had policies around credit recovery, and clearly they were not followed in the cases outlined in the report, but I agree that it's an area that we are planning to look into further at OSSE as well.
Okay, you'll get the last question. Your name, please.
Kurt Kramer from I'd like to ask the Chancellor or the Superintendent, who today is the acting principal at Blue, and how often are you in communication with that person?
Chancellor.
Well, we have a principal, Jackson, who was our principal at Phelps High School, who we've had at Ballou for the last several weeks. He will continue to stay there at least through the end of January. We're in the process and have been in the process. You know, principal selection is an important part of our work, even in an interim basis, which we will have for the rest of the school year. And so we are conducting those interviews, and we will, when we are ready to announce the person who will carry the school through the rest of the year, we will share that at that time. But we do have Principal Jackson who's still there, and he will continue to lead until we are ready to make the replacement.
Chancellor Wilson, what about the assistant principals who were named? We have a lot of questions about this, Mayor Bowser. I know you want to cut us off, but we have a lot of questions.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks. Chancellor Wilson, what about the assistant principals? You've told us that principal has been placed on administrative leave. The report clearly indicates that multiple assistant principals also played a role in pressuring teachers with grades and accountability. Have any of them been held accountable?
So, you know, our assistant principals are absolutely expected to uphold our expectations as a school district. As it relates to the substance of the allegation report, Ballou has a system where there's one assistant principal that's in charge of this work, and I want to make sure that we are clear on that, and in terms of representing the senior class. And we are, as the mayor said, we are involved with our human resources department, and they are having conversations with the assistant principal at Ballou. And then as we look at other schools as well, we will follow up accordingly to address any concerns that we see there.
So the assistant principal is still in place at Ballou?
The assistant principal is in conversations with our human resources department, and when I have more to report at that time, when I have more to report on that, I'd be happy to do so.
But it's still at Ballou working?
The assistant principal currently is at Ballou, and as we complete our work there with our HR department, and I have more to report, I'd be happy to do so.
Is it accurate to say then that this assistant principal is being investigated?
We don't really have anything else to say about personnel, and I would like to remind everybody that there are children that go to this school, and that these children also need to be focused on their studies, and we need to do what we need to do with as least disruption to the children as possible. So as we are able to share more with you, we will do that. Thank you, everybody.
Can I do an off topic real quick? Could you talk about? Sorry. I just want to ask you about Metro. Have you talked to the general manager, Mr. Wiedefeld?
Yes, I have.
Can you give us a latest update on what you've heard and also your feelings about yesterday? I know the communication between the firefighters seemed to work, but there was some communication problems between.
I can't really say anything about those responses yet. Yet as we move forward. I will say yesterday I briefed the press to let them know that our fire and emergency medical services responded to a disabled, and I think when the call came, when I got the call, it was a disabled train. Then I realized that we had a partial derailment within one of the tunnels on the red line. And our crews safely evacuated 63 people. We understand that Metro will be working with Federal Transit to investigate the causes, whether it's a defective rail, any issues with the car, and the communication systems. That process will happen. I will tell you, and I had a briefing before I came in from our public safety team to ensure that the things that we committed to 3 years ago have been in place, and so that our firefighter training with Metro in place, fire personnel at Metro, what they call the ROC in place, that our unified command system responded and was put in place to respond to the scene. All of that happened. And our checks of what they call a repeater system to ensure that radio communication can come up out of the tunnel worked for us. So we did not experience any problems communicating among our firefighters. I heard the same reports that you did, that there was some communication issues among the Metro personnel, but I'll have to have them explain all of that. I think the bottom line for us is that we know we have a system that's really at the heart of how we move people around this region. And we have to stay focused on it's not, it's consistent, is persistent, is every day, making sure that those rails and tunnels are safe for our residents. Thank you.
On snow prep for tonight?
The city administrator can update you
Very much.
specifically.
Good afternoon now. Rashad Young, City Administrator. We are expecting overnight accumulation occurring sometime after midnight, perhaps through the morning rush. The forecast says anything between a dusting and 2 inches. The Department of Public Works and our snow team will deploy at 7 p.m. This evening for a full deployment, which means all of our assets will be on city thoroughfares and streets, treating with salt. We have pre-treated throughout the weekend and through yesterday with a brine to prepare our roads for this inclement weather. So as we always do, we'll monitor the conditions throughout the evening and through the night and make any calls about service in schools based upon what we actually see with this forecast. Because it's a wide forecast from a dusting to 2 inches, we're going to have to let it play out through the early morning hours and make any determination about service. But we'll have a full deployment at 7 p.m. Throughout the night to make sure that we are as prepared as we can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.